Hey, welcome to year 3 of the Business of Fun podcast. It's me, Dave Wakeman. My guest today, Kate Howard, the Chief Commercial Officer of Eventellect. Kate did me a super solid because the computer I have used to record the podcast for the last couple years, it blew up on me when the first time we recorded the podcast, so we had to redo it. But it worked out for all of you and for me because I got a chance to talk to Kate again, and this podcast is a lot more current. We just did it a couple days ago, and we get to a whole lot of stuff that's really, really relevant to this point in time when things are starting to reopen, right? On June 11th, capacity goes to 100% in D.C. I think pretty much things are open now. I went to the Nationals game on Sunday. I didn't have to wear a mask. It was crazy. I still felt a little odd being out without the mask on, but I got used to it. I tried one of the worst beverages ever. It was a great day at the ballpark. It was fun. Make sure, if you haven't already, get the Talking Tickets newsletter. That's my weekly newsletter. It comes out on Fridays. It's dedicated to the business of marketing and selling live events. You can get it by hitting up talkingtickets.substack.com, or you can send me an email. It's my name, dave@davewakeman.com, and I will get you on this thing. All kinds of great stuff in there every week, analysis, action items. I get more emails about this thing, I enjoy it. It's just a great thing. So get the Talking Tickets newsletter. Check out my friends at Booking Protect, the global leaders in refund protection. I was talking to Simon Mabb. He told me that the refund protection uptake rates have almost doubled since the pandemic started, and tickets have gone back on sale. So check it out, bookingprotect.com. Find out how you can give people peace of mind, because looking at that data, people want that right now. Check out my friends also at ActivityStream. Next week, I'm going to post a conversation I just had with Martin Gameltoff about the Activate email marketing platform that they've added to the ActivityStream ecosystem. It's a great tool. We also got just a bunch of stuff to talk about. It was also fitting because Martin seems to be the second guest I have on every time the calendar turns over and we start a new year. So Martin's coming on to talk about this. But visit them at activitystream.com to find out what they're up to, learn more about the Activate email marketing platform. And I think we're going to have some stuff we're going to do in the fall that's going to be very fun, very exciting, and might even be helpful for you. So check them out. So back to Kate. So anyway, Kate Howard, she's awesome, right? And it was really, really cool because, how do I want to put it? Kate beat me to the punch on a lot of the stories and ideas that we wanted to talk about. So we hit a bunch of really great stuff. One of the big things we were talking about, though, is this ongoing effort that I've been teaming up with Eventellect on, which is to teach you about research and NPS score. So we hit that. We also talked about pricing. We talked about data. We talked about demand generation. We talked about content. We talked about initial pricing, price integrity, the holistic pricing model. We talked about the unified single game ticket idea that Eventellect uses. We talked about some kind of big marketing things. We talked about the art and science of pricing, dynamic pricing. We talked about partnerships. We talked about exclusive partnerships. We talked about the once in a lifetime nature of going to a live event. We talked about, how segmentation should be done. We talked about how probably Kate and I are a lot more alike if you're segmenting your audience based on behavior than you might think, because we both go to a lot of games with our kids. Kate's just a really smart and savvy ticket person. And the way she approached it was really so refreshing because she's so very thoughtful. And so I just really had a great time talking to her. And she's going to be doing a panel with me at Ticket Summit in Las Vegas in August. So there's that to look forward to. But I think you're really just going to enjoy hearing from Kate Howard from Eventellect on the Business of Fun podcast. All right, so I am going to introduce this wonderful young lady. for a second time, but only the first time that you're going to hear it. It's Kate Howard. Kate, what's happening?
Hello. Thank you for having me. I love that you called me young. Let's just keep that. I'm going to just continue to drink from the fountain of youth and require that people call me young forever. So perfect. I love that introduction.
Please do. I say please do. I feel like this is going to be awesome because the last time, I mean, unfortunately, it was an error on my part that destroyed the file. But people had thought we knew each other forever, as opposed to like that was the first time we talked. So this is only the second time we talked. So this is going to be awesome. We have we have banter.
Punches.
Yes.
Exactly. we make it work. That's what we do.
Yes,
so
we're good
problem.
Like that. I think they call it
Friday,
good podcast.
So
yes,
we're winning.
So much winning, Kate. So this is great. I mean, it's not great that I screwed up the file for the first one, but it's great because it's given us a chance to get a better understanding of what the post-pandemic ticket market might look like. And so we can have a much different conversation, and it's going to be a lot more fun, or it's going to be as much fun, if not more, than the first time. Let me put it like that. So I want to start out the first thing by asking you, knowing that we're recording this on almost the 1st of June, May 21st, what does the opening up of tickets and on sales look like right now from the data you have and from what you're seeing with your partners in the market?
Yeah. So, I mean, leading up to this point, I mean, in the limited capacity scenario, especially in baseball, I mean, we saw tremendous demand and we saw prices through the roof for the most part, which was fantastic. And we were hoping was a good indicator of, what consumers were going to be in the mood for really coming out of this. And then since then, we've had NFL schedule release, which was fantastic, which I think just cemented the idea that, yes, people are ready to get out. People are ready to go have fun in spaces with other humans and watch some events. So those have been really good, strong indicators. Now, we have gone, in the words of Drake, 0 to 100 really fast in terms of moving from limited capacity into 100% capacity, which I anticipate will be pretty much all the way there by July for genres performing in that time. But so the question that everyone is kind of reading the tea leaves on right now is, as we move into 100% capacity, is demand at 100%, and will we start to see that? And I think, like I said, the indicators in terms of the NFL schedule release and how we've seen baseball perform and MLS to some extent is good. And I think it's good, but we'll be watching closely and, understanding more and more about consumers. And I think it's probably going to vary truly by market and quite honestly, the vaccination percentages that are happening in each of the markets. I live in California, and we were obviously an extremely locked down state, but now we are far above the national average in terms of vaccinations, and it's been a complete sea change in terms of what people are willing to do at this point. And so with football coming back in September, and we have the new SoFi Stadium with the Dodgers and the Giants and all of the other teams in our state. At one point, we didn't even know if we would be able to open up past 25% for the rest of the summer. And as you may know, that California is opening up fully on June 15th. So those are really strong, great indicators. And I think we see the same thing across many other states. So long story long, I think it's going to depend on vaccination numbers and those going up. I think it's going to also depend on masking requirements and just various requirements to get into events. Any friction or barrier to entry for consumers is never great for conversion, but it is what it is. And it'll really depend on how badly people want to go to events, which right now it seems like they really want to go.
Yeah, it's important to note the thing that you just said about friction, because any friction is not great to get people to go. There's a case study. I saw an article, I don't forget which paper it was in Australia, but that's a challenge that the Australian Football League is dealing with right now, is that because of the friction, the masks, the distance requirements, all these things, it has slowed down people returning. So it is very important to pay attention to that, because it's not necessarily certain that it's going to happen, but if it's happening in other countries and in other places, it's a good indication that it's probably something that you should be aware of, at least from where I sit. I want to ask you another question to follow up on the thing about demand being 100%, right? Mm-hmm. And having to go, our demand is good, but it's going to vary from point to point. And it brings up this idea because we've seen, I mean, from the first conversation, the state of the world is incredibly, I would say, almost 100% better than it was when we first talked. And we were talking about by the fall we would have data that would be relevant to help us make, understand purchasing patterns. We were hoping that things would be open maybe by the fall. Now everything's going to be open probably by July 1st, right? Like I think Joe Biden said July 4th. So like a fire hose, really. What do we do to help, grow demand and make sure demand's stable, and at the same time don't revert to pricing promotions, right? Because I've already gotten let me see here, ballpark guesstimate, right? Because I don't have my email application open in front of me, about 75 emails today with different discount codes from around the country on there. And I did a presentation this week, so it's fresh in my mind about pricing correctly. And we were talking about pricing patterns before we turned on the microphones. So from your point of view, with the data you have, what does the pricing look like, and how can we make some decisions to make sure we keep price integrity?
Yeah. So there's a lot there, and I think kind of thinking about pricing holistically, right? And starting with a strategy before you move to the tactic of discounting, right? So the way that we think about pricing is we start off with a lot of science and then get closer and closer to more of an art as you're into the meat of the landscape of the event life cycle. So the forecast starts. So we have a forecast for, an entire season, and then we have a forecast for event by event. And what we use is bringing in historical data to bear, the known environments like the opponent's, forecasted team performance, the schedule, all of those things, and bring that in to create a forecast for an event. And then we have an event score and an event price, and everything kind of radiates off that from the start, with the idea being that we want to start an event off with a market clearing price, so that the idea is that you are creating as much velocity as you can related to consumers feeling like they're getting a deal, and also consumers being trained to buy early in an event, right? In an event life cycle. So the way that we price is to make sure that, one, our best tickets are going out first at, brand protective and market clearing prices. And then appropriately, as tickets sell, putting tickets out, across the rest of the life cycle, based on, how tickets are selling and how demand is performing. So going back to, you have an initial price that you start with, and then you have to start reacting real time to what the market is doing. And one of the things, kind of going back to some of the things you were saying and how do we generate demand, one of the things that's happening that I think is actually great is teams are starting to look at, experiential demand generators like fireworks, like bobbleheads, right? And all of those things are fantastic because they enhance the customer experience and they do generate demand. So when one of those things are announced, okay, you have to relook at your pricing and you have to realize like, hey, if a team announces a bobblehead, for example, the upper bowl is probably going to start moving a lot faster than it had originally, which has a direct relationship to how you price the lower bowl. But again, you're guided by a forecast that you had from the beginning. So you always have kind of that North Star, and then you have elasticity within that to be able to react appropriately. And related to, downward pricing pressure, it's sometimes it is necessary and appropriate, but mostly you should be focused on the percentage, right? You are wanting your prices to remain high, and downward pricing should happen at a far smaller percentage than raising prices. And doing that requires, a lot of discipline, one, and also it requires understanding historical consumer behavior. So for example, if you have an event on Saturday, and on Wednesday, you're looking at the event and stuff is just not moving as fast as you want. And your first instinct, maybe I need to cut price, right? Well, hold on. First of all, how much are you going to cut price, right? If you're cutting a ticket from, let's say, $28 down to $26, that's probably not going to be a inflection point for somebody deciding to buy a ticket or not, right? Mm-hmm. So that's number one. So really being deliberate. If you're going to take a price down, make sure that you're doing it in a way that you think that a consumer is going to react to. But number two, you got to look at your forecast and your pacing, and you got to understand, well, if people haven't bought by Wednesday, a lot of those people were never going to buy until Saturday. And is changing the prices down by a couple of dollars really going to make the difference for them? Or were they just going to buy that ticket at $28 on Saturday anyway? So that's how we try to think about pricing and pricing discipline, because we really do want to make sure that we're not creating downward pressure on the market unnecessarily. If a level of spoilage is going to happen, again, you have a forecast on that. And so you kind of understand what that is going to be ahead of time. So again, your tactics are really informed by your larger strategy so that you can make decisions rooted in your data and rooted in your experience, so that you're not creating unnecessary volatility in the market, especially on the downside.
Kate, you never disappoint with these answers. You always, it's like, we're like twins on this thing. So you talked about the historical data and having a forecast. Knowing that the environment we're operating in has changed entirely, what correlation is there to like the historical data and reality now? How effective is this data? Because before when we first talked, we were talking about like it's really nobody knows for sure, and now we're a couple weeks past that. What's happening there? Is it like more like we still are kind of waiting and seeing, or are we seeing any kind of direct correlation?
Yeah, well, so I mean, COVID and limited capacity was such a moment in time, right? So we can't base, our 100% pricing strategies on what was happening during limited capacity, but it has to be informed by it, just as it's informed by the 2019 behavior and 2018 behavior, right? So, do I think that still pod sizes will be smaller than they would normally be in, let's say when we're a year from now? Yes, probably. And so we definitely take that into account. But we're not constricted at this point on a must have in terms of pod sizes. Like, so for example, people are allowed to sit next to each other. So we don't have to limit our inventory based on how many 2-packs we have, but are people still going to choose to have less members of their family or friends come to an event? Possibly. Although we still, even when we talked a few weeks ago, that was starting to shift, especially in family friendly events, like MLS and baseball, people were starting to go up and 4-packs were definitely starting to be more prevalent. So it has to be informed by this last year, but you're right. We're not using, this last year as a template for how we strategize around what 100% capacity looks like. But it is a data point that you have to recognize and look at. And when you're looking at your pacing for the event, you have to think about the fact that, okay, what's the percentage of vaccinations? What's the percentage of 1 shot versus 2 shots? One of the kind of things that we saw when the vaccinations first came out is kind of a lull in behavior between first shot and second shot, right? Because people were getting their first shot, and even anecdotally in our office, no one wanted to mess up that point of, I got my first shot, I've gotten this far, I do not want to, get COVID in between my first and second shot. So people were really laying low, right? So we're kind of past that. But in a lot of states, still they're ramping up into their the prevalence of vaccines being available and, vaccine hesitancy being overcome. So there's like little kind of anecdotal bits like that, again, kind of going back to that idea of, you want to be rooted in science, but there also requires a level of art and human nuance to be able to inform that science. And a lot of people talk about AI and machine learning, and those things are great. Automation is super important in order to scale. And there's a lot of things that, that we do that are automated. But in order for a machine to learn, a a human who understands nuance has to teach it. That's why it's called machine learning, right? So it's super important to have people who are watching all of these kind of anecdotal elements of the business and the market and the landscape, and being able to take action based on that and kind of inform the strategy based on all of those things.
Again, Kate, you say all the, you know how to talk my language here, because one of the awesome things that you said is how pricing is an art and a science, and then you talked about all these great tools. They're still art and science. One of the things that, I mean, there's so much. You do this to me. You bring up all the good ideas.
Flattery will get you everywhere, Dave. Everywhere you want to go.
How do you get people to like you? You start out by liking them, right, or something, and then how it goes. But it's like it's so cool. And I was gonna say, with the anecdotal thing of between the lull between your first and second shot, how do the kids like you say it? It me? Is that the internet?
Yeah, that's what the kids are saying these days.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I was like laying low. I was like, I'm not getting sick now. I've gotten this far. I totally was saying that. Now, but one question I wanted to have, because you brought up the idea of understanding the timing of the people's buying patterns, and the example I thought you used was pretty awesome of when between Wednesday and Saturday, and people probably aren't going to buy the ticket if they haven't bought by Wednesday until the last minute anyway, because now you're in that window. Probably it's maybe my information from doing it on the secondary market for a long time is a little outdated, but it was always about 72 hours. Like if you didn't sell out by like Tuesday or Wednesday, then you were going to have all your inventory sitting there until Friday and Saturday for the weekend. Mm-hmm. And that was the way it worked. Now, I have beef with discounts, right? It's a well-known beef. It's a long-term beef. It goes back to really, actually, it started when I started out in nightclubs. So my dislike of discounts goes back a very, very long time, many, many years. How do you have that conversation?
We need to get you and discounts in the ring, and you guys need to hash it out.
You should see the slide. You should see my slideshow, Kate. You should see my because I basically body slam discounts in the slideshow. It's pretty good. But how do you have that conversation? Because one of the things about the secondary market that's great, in my opinion, is that in the secondary market you can discount. You can, because you can hide behind this the free market. It reflects demand. You do all these things. But if the team does it, it's a discount. It undermines the brand. It it breaks promises to their customers. They feel duped. There's all these studies that show all these things. How do you have the conversation around this thing? Around going, look, here's the data that says don't discount today. Because they weren't going to buy. They were $5 off isn't going to save you anyway. They weren't going to buy that thing. So that we can cut out or avoid some of these heavy discounts that really just train people to wait longer and longer. And it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy that people are like going, well, I'll just wait till Friday to go see if there's tickets for the game on Saturday because there's always a better deal.
Right. So it goes back to your relationship and shared objectives, right? Our best partnerships are with teams that we are having top of the funnel conversations with about strategy for the upcoming season. And when you do that, you're able to have these conversations and figure out a starting strategy that makes sense. And if one of the concerns is downward pressure on pricing, well, then let's figure out how to create a market that incentivizes, stability. So that's one of the conversations that we have. And, one of our business models is being an exclusive partner to content. And what that really does is allow content to have much more visibility and understanding of the nuance of the market. Because what happens if you have, for example, a lot of brokers in your market, or even a strong season ticket base who then set the market on the secondary, both of those things can be detrimental. But if you're working with someone on a unified single game strategy, which I can define in a minute, basically what you're doing is taking all of your single game inventory and you're working through it together and you're figuring out the best possible strategy together. So if you're doing that at the front end, it takes a lot of the mystery out of what's going to happen later in the cycle because you're talking through some of those challenges early. And when you're working with someone like us at Eventellect, a lot of times what we're doing is taking that pressure off of you and telling you up front, hey, this is what we think, again, going back to forecast and science and historical data, this is what we think this season will look like. And this is why. And this is, and even going a step further than that and saying, okay, if you win these first 4 games, then, this remains the same. If you lose here, or if this partner who's or this opponent who is usually a good travel draw is not doing well and not having a great season, then we're going to have to adjust the thinking and the pricing. So the idea is that it's transparent and that you're trying to eliminate surprises, because even though this is a volatile industry, there's a lot that can be known. And so we try to talk through those things. And if you have the right pricing strategy up front, there should be much less of a need to discount later. And that's the conversation that we have. And there's healthy tension there and healthy conversation, but that makes us both better, right?
Oh, absolutely. And you said it earlier too. It's both art and science. And I think that one of the struggles that people deal with is that in pricing, unlike most aspects of marketing, there's a lot of gray area, right? Like to me, my marketing degree is a Bachelor of Science, and I think of marketing as a science, right? There's a very much a process that goes into it. And, what I hear from you is that pricing, it demands the same amount of research and attention that any other thing you're going to analyze in your business does. And it's to not analyze your price and to not understand the peaks and valleys, the variables and constraints that go into it, means that you're missing a great opportunity. But maybe I'm wrong, because you're the one who's like here laying it on for me today. So I'm going to let you shine on this topic.
No, you're.
I'm just going to go over here and body slam discounts for a few minutes.
Perfect. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, pricing is one of the most important things that that you're going to look at in your business. But there's the other pieces as well. I mean, there's the experience for the fan. There's, making tickets accessible for fans no matter where they shop. And that gets back to what we call our unified single game strategy, which is really just about marrying the objectives of the content and us and the fan, so that no matter where they go to shop, because we know that they're not loyal to where they shop, they're going to Google. They're loyal to Google, right? So you want to make sure that you're merchandising your inventory across all of the different potential channels that are available to shoppers, and you want them merchandised in the right way, priced in the right way, and you want your tickets put out and broadcast in a way that makes sense. Like, never in a million years would we dump all of our inventory out at one time. Like, that's not the way to merchandise your tickets, and that's not the way to get consumers to buy in the way that you think is most effective and fills your building in the way that you want it to be filled. So pricing is important. It's a piece of the pie. But also there's a holistic strategy that goes into it. And pricing is really, there's twofold, right? There's single game pricing, there's season pricing, and then you look at kind of the market dynamics across all of the different marketplaces and how, the free market prices your tickets, right? So there's so many different aspects to it, which is why we, take pride in coming to teams with a holistic strategy, right? We have tools and we have transparency and we have data, but that's only part of it. We really have more of a full service solution that is about, of course, products and tools and all of that, but it's about a wealth of resources that encompasses all of those things, including, culture and employees and all of those kinds of things that come together to create the environment where innovative things can happen with teams, and we can really bring our shared expertise to bear and help each other thrive.
Yeah, no, the holistic thing is great, and pricing is super important. And the way that you talk about, I really enjoyed the part where you talked about adding experiential things, and increasing the perceived value of the ticket or the event, because call me old fashioned, or just call me old, Kate. It's fine.
Never.
But one of the really like missed opportunities, or one of the big potential opportunities, is to wrap your ticket in all of the awesome things that go on when you go to a game, and to amplify those at every touch and turn, right? There are a lot of people, that come to teams. They come to platforms, teams, companies, whatever. They come to them and they go, it's just a commodity, right? Mm-hmm. And to an extent, it may act like a commodity, but my philosophy on marketing is that there is no such thing as a commodity. Everything can have its value enhanced. Everything can be positioned in a way that creates value. What I hear in our conversation is that that's your point of view as well. It's like we need to work on elevating the perception of value, and that'll help with demand generation, and that'll help with price integrity, and it'll have a cascade effect on all these positive outcomes. So you said we come to our partners with a holistic strategy. What do you talk about when you talk about elevating the experience? How do you have that conversation? And I know I backtracked like about a half hour, but we were getting into so much good stuff about the pricing. But I didn't want to miss that, because the experience is unique. It's one of a kind. Every night, no matter what you go see, it's the only time it's ever going to happen.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing, right? When we come to teams, what we want to do and what we want to help them do is focus on the elements that only the content uniquely can control. And the truth of the matter is, only content can really drive demand. And the way they drive demand is, of course, the biggest thing is performance, right? Team performance. But the other things are experiences, the way their fans feel, the in-game events, the giveaways that they have. And so what we want to do is take the burden of some of the things like, moving some of these single game tickets, pricing, understanding all of the nuance of the secondary market and all of the nuance of all of these different marketplaces. And I mean, as you know, having worked in this industry for a long time, there's so much that goes into, getting your tickets out on the open market. And fans don't see a difference between primary and secondary anymore. That line has really been fully blurred, if not erased. And so, but there still is complexity in terms of just like the nitty gritty. And this is going to bore anyone that isn't in this business, but like, ticket fulfillment APIs and integrations around that and order inventory feeds and different selfies by different marketplaces. Teams are not necessarily equipped to deal with all of that. And yet there's this huge audience over here that's utilizing these platforms. But what the teams can do is focus on their marketing, focus on their fan experience, and generate demand, which then rising tides lift all boats, right? So that's really our value proposition, is let us come to you and help you and support you and your staff and all of these things that we have been working in for, the last 17 years, and let you shine where you shine, which is selling season tickets in the appropriate places, creating incredible fan experiences, and making sure, that your fans have access to your tickets. That's really kind of what I see it being all about.
Well, I mean, I agree.
We are in violent agreement.
Yeah, we are in violent agreement on most things. But it brings up two important topics that people really, I think they struggle with. And I think it goes back to this thing about, I think it's just some ways it's a very interesting time we live in, but it's also just a weird time where people don't necessarily, they feel like if they don't do something well, that it's a black mark against them, that it's like some like negative thing. And it's the idea of core competencies. None of us can do everything well, right? Mm-hmm. There's a couple things we can do better than, everything else that we do. And so it makes sense to focus on those two or three things. Like you said, driving demand, improving the marketing, and making sure the experience is phenomenal. And every team should be focusing on that, because those are three things they, like you said, can absolutely control. And on top of that, I think that one thing I've been trying to teach everybody about is the idea of touch points. And what it was like during the pandemic, I studied touch points, right? And it's just, you can define it in a number of ways. It's just really the buyer path, right? And I don't think people understand how long it is and how much longer it is than people think about it. And then that all these little things add up over time. So that those emails that people are sending out that are like kind of just thrown together and not well thought out, those detract, right? So you have to think about these, because if I'm not wrong, or if I am, unless I am wrong, I guess is a better way of putting it, these touch points, again, fall right into those core competencies, and focus on the experience, focus on the marketing, and focus on just making sure that you are driving demand through all the mechanisms you have, because you have world-class content every day, and it's stuff that only happens once, right? It's like Broadway has 8 shows a week, right? Even if you I went to see the producers, right? Here's an example. I went to see Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick and the producers. I'm embarrassed to say it now, but I think either 4 or 5 times.
Oh, wow! I'm impressed.
Yes, well, and I loved it. I the first time I saw it, I said,
it's a fantastic show. It's a great movie. It's an amazing show.
Well, knees pressed against the stage, and I was losing it, right? It was the greatest thing I've ever seen. But it was an entirely different experience than every other time. And, and the point being that, it doesn't matter exactly who's playing, right? Performance does impact things, right? There's no doubt about it. But the other aspects that performance doesn't replace can still be awesome, right? Because people went to Cubs games for years when the Cubs weren't very good. People went to Fenway Park for years and years and years, and it didn't matter, right?
Yep.
I'm trying to think of good examples in other sports where baseball has those 2 examples are probably the best. You can control these things, and it's just, you have to. I mean, it's just unbelievable that these aren't the priorities, and now is a really good time for people to focus on those, because it's really important.
Absolutely. I mean, the experience of going to an event, like you said, it's about brand building and creating this environment where, whether or not the team wins or loses, I still feel like I got out there and I had some fun, right? And that's the idea. And especially with, these family friendly events, and, when I take my daughter out to, games and things like that, I'm excited about her walking around the concourse and, seeing the stands and buying, frozen malt, from our seats, and it's the whole experience. Right. And so, and there's different, this goes to another point. We could go off on a tangent forever, but different customers requiring different things, right? So I'm a mom now, and way more boring than some of the my younger counterparts who want to go to an event and they don't even want to sit in a seat. They don't even want to sit in a seat. They want to go and have kind of more of a bar party experience and watch the game from a club, and maybe not even ever buy a seat, maybe just buy a ticket to entry, right? So like you said, those touch points, knowing your customers, knowing what they're going to be interested in. Not only are you creating content every day with what's out there, on the court or on the field or whatever, you're also creating content on social media. I love being delighted by something funny that a team or a brand puts out, far more than I like receiving an email. And stays in my mind longer. And so those are the types of things, and teams are, there's teams that are doing a fantastic job already, and everyone's getting better, every day. But as just a consumer, those are the types of touch points that really get me. And even during these pandemic times, some teams were fantastic about still engaging, season ticket holders and sending you little packages in the mail, even if it was cookies with their brand on it or whatever, just keeping them top of mind and saying, hey, we may not be playing right now, or you may not be able to come to our game right now, but we still remember you as a fan. That stuff works. It just does. Oh yeah,
there's a picture I shared in my newsletter, Talking Tickets, a couple weeks ago, of the package that the Boston Red Sox premium team sent to their premium buyers, because they had to replace the experience they give them during spring training with something that didn't require people to get on a plane and travel to Florida. And they were constantly sending like people notes and messages and engaging with people. It's again, these touch points are so super important, and you just have to understand that, like you said, Kate, different buyers, different people value different things at different times in their life. There's no straight line on demand or experience or value. And that's why the pricing thing is so important to me, because I look at it as the MVP moment, the most valuable moment, because it's where you capture some of the value you created. But you have to understand what's driving behavior, which, you're talking about like being a mom, and my son, he's 11, I go to games way differently than I did when I was at 45 than I did when I was 35 or 25 even, right? And,
right.
And it's a whole different experience. But to then try to lump me in with like another, 45-year-old dad, you probably they're probably going and doing something entirely different as well, just because I have a different experience with the games and events. That point of understanding your audience and doing the research that it takes to understand what drives behaviors, it may seem tedious, it may seem unnecessary, but it's probably the most important thing I think people can do right now, because this last year and a half has changed people. We have, I'm not sure, and this is a question I'm going to ask you, and maybe you don't know the answer because maybe you haven't seen it yet, but there's been migration patterns. People have moved to different cities, different locations. They started prioritizing different things. This idea of understanding Dave or Kate better because of, compared to, I forgot now I can't remember, maybe even Will, right? We'll talk about Will. We'll plug Will while we're on here. It's going to be entirely different, right? He's a young guy. He's going to be, he's younger than us. But
right.
You have to understand this. It's absolutely essential. So my question is, how have you seen like some of this data, but especially behavioral data, and how much has it changed? Or like what's new and unique and different that we can point people towards?
Yeah, so I think, brands are getting much better and teams are getting much better at segmenting the consumers. It used to be, back, I don't know, 7 years ago, when millennial was the term, right? We gotta reach millennials. We gotta reach millennials, right? And millennial is such a wide swath of people.
I also body slam millennial in my presentations.
Okay, great. So Pat Ryan, that one of the founders of Eventellect, actually just sent around an article about geriatric millennials, which, by the way, is me, and I felt attacked and triggered by that term. But it's true in that the idea was that a geriatric millennial, which is I like to call an early adopter millennial, like born around 1982, 1983, is vastly different from a millennial who was born in 1994, right? That we're just totally different times of their lives and looking for different things. And so if you kind of understand that and start to segment more strategically and more specifically, then you can market to me differently than you would market to like Will, So I think like looking at it that way, and those behaviors are definitely starting to change. I mean, teams have been looking at big data now for a while, and I think, struggled to figure out how to make all of this insight and all of these inputs coming in actionable. But I think the places that they're most actionable are in the customer experience perspective, and less so in some of the other tactical areas around email lists, right? It's really more about how to create the experiences for fans that are going to your events, and do you know who's going to your events and how to service them. But I think it remains a question that's still being answered and still being tackled in terms of how best to create a strategy around it. But I've definitely seen movement.
Well, the example you use too is like between 83 and 93 would probably be the difference between your formative teenage years being around this. I'm going to screw this up. This is totally going to be awful, and you can laugh. It's totally fine. But maybe like when you were just starting a teenager, you were catching the tail end of grunge. And then like if you were 93, then you're catching, when you started to become a teenager, you're catching the tail end of like NSYNC and all of those like boy bands. And that's a huge difference. So yeah, I was going to go like I was about to date myself like tremendously at that point.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like the Pearl Jam versus the Spice Girls.
That was the one I was going to use, Kate. That was exactly the one.
Okay, yes, of course.
But you know me.
That's exactly right. And so, we just have to understand those nuances, and it's exciting and it's fun, and it is so fun to be working in events. I mean, you get to do stuff where people go out and have a good time. Like, what could be better, right? And so, like, having all of these quote unquote problems, they're not problems at all. They're challenges and obstacles that can be overcome. And I just think this business has so much more innovation to come. And this past year has been a challenge, but I think that everyone is so energized to come roaring back and really have, an exciting fan experience for years and years to come.
Yeah. That would be my challenge to people, is like going, just try to trick yourself into moving beyond like the way we've always done things, because there's so much opportunity like to innovate and to add value and to like make things fun. It's the segmentation thing. The best one I've seen example is that the one that shows Prince Charles and Ozzy Osbourne next to ech other. And then the second best one is Prince George and Machine Gun Kelly are like the same, like Gen Z or whatever the thing is. It's both of them, which prove how pointless it is to make your segmentation by age brackets. Do it by behavior. I mean, come on,
Yes.
Probably yes. Like, you might not think it, but I'm going to guess that both my behavior and Kate's behavior is much more similar than probably because I think our age bracket, I would be Gen X and you might be a millennial, than you would get by looking at us as Gen X and millennials. And that should prove a point.
Yes, absolutely.
Let me ask you one final set of things here before we wrap up and we go on with our Friday afternoons and have some fun, I hope, for the weekend. When we first started talking about doing the podcast, we were talking about some research that you did at the start of the pandemic to understand your market better. And one of the cool things that came out of the research was you tested your Net Promoter Score. And months on from when we first started talking about this, I'm still jealous of the 77 because I did one for like some of the stuff I did, and the highest I have is 67. I'm catching up, is what I'm saying. But you we almost have to stop making, or I have to stop making jokes because I sound not serious about this, because I'm very serious about this, because you went and did some really, really incredible research, and it brought back just tremendous information about what people want, need, and value from you, right? Which is incredibly valuable, no matter what business or part of the business you're in. And it gave you that Net Promoter Score, which 77 is unbelievable. It's past companies like that you would think of as like having great products like Starbucks or Apple or Tesla, right? It's unbelievable. But when we first talked about it, we were still kind of in that process where we don't know what was going to happen with the pandemic, and when things would start to open up, and some of the data, the research was great, the data you had was awesome, but how you were going to use it was still up in the air. So my question is, like, now as it's emerged, how valuable has doing the research been for you and your business? And number two, how have you been able to apply some of that now that like people are coming out, starting to have events go on sale, starting to operate a little bit more closer to normal again?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. Yes, that we did see incredible results from that. And it was really important to us to create a baseline for our customers. And it's important to ask your customers how you're doing. And it's vulnerable because you actually really do want the feedback. And as awesome as the good feedback is, getting the valuable constructive criticism, or hey, we want to see more of this, is actually far more valuable. So that's where we really keyed in. It's like, okay, we're so happy that generally people really like working with us and find value in what we're doing, but also what else can we do? And a lot of the feedback that we got was around like pricing, right? Like it's just a core element, right? So clients are really interested in understanding our proprietary software and how we figure out our pricing and the operational impacts of that and all of that stuff. So continuing to be more more and more transparent. Also altering our roadmap if appropriate. If we got a trend in comments about something that customers want to see from us, and it was further down on the roadmap than maybe we anticipated the importance being, then we changed it, and that's what this type of survey does for a company, is just allows us to prioritize better based on what our customers are saying that they need. So pricing, came out as one, being people just being really interested in that and wanting to understand more, wanting to have a more holistic strategy, again, really marrying up this idea of having one objective and one goal together to try and drive single game sales and have a unified strategy there so that they can focus on their season ticket and marketing efforts. So those are the ways that we really kind of took it, and we'll do it again. It'll probably be something that we do once a year and try and understand, where did we exceed? Where did we fall short? Where can we innovate more? Is really the goal there. But again, where we saw the most impact is determining how to prioritize our roadmap, and also the level of transparency that our partners really want to see in terms of what we're doing and the level of communication. And so we've really ramped that up over the course of the pandemic in terms of engagement, communication, and really, opening up the robe, if you will.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm like blowing smoke or anything, but I was able to look at some of the stuff, and how you've translated it has really been great, because you did take the information and you applied it. And it's like you said, you want the feedback, and then what happens a lot of times is you get the feedback and you go, oh no, I don't want that feedback, and you turn away from it. But you didn't, and it's actually because I know all of you have used it very well, and it has come up, and it's allowed you to change your operations for the better. And that's really the power of doing research, right? It allows you to do things better, right? Because I said, and I believe it was from talking to you the first time in our loss conversation, was that it helped me make a change, right? Like talking to you about how the research impacted you. And I think it was, we were talking about the way you present insights and how you give, you lay things out so you can digest the insights quickly. And then if you want to go deeper, we give you that too. And that made me change the way I write some articles and I do my newsletter each week. It's like, let me give you the big ideas at the top. And then if you care more, you go in deeper. But no matter what, I get that big point across. And that was to me, that was a great insight that you provided. And I know all of that came out of the research, and the fact that you created a baseline. For me as a marketing nerd, that's the gold standard, because you can't just measure it once. You have to track it over time, right? You have to track your net promoter score, your branding, all these things. It's really great. And then you apply it. It's, and so I thought the study was really well done, and I was really impressed with the information and the feedback you were able to get from your customers. It was awesome.
Oh, well, thank you.
I'm a geek for this stuff, though. This is like,
yeah.
Not just a class clown, but a marketing geek.
Right. Exactly. Very, niche industry talk, but like, this is the meat and potatoes, this is what we do. And this is, people that want to go into sports, like, it's glamorous, but it's actually more what we're talking about right now than anything else, right? Like it's digging in, it's being vulnerable to feedback, it's trying things and then trying them again. It's all of that stuff. And so, it's the perfect place for geeks. People don't know that sports is great for geeks. Let me just put that out there.
I was going to say, I'm like just a marketing geek that happens to work around like events a lot of times, but it's great because you have like you can get the feedback so very quickly, right? You can, if you're doing it well, if you experiment, you can learn and adjust very, very quickly. It's very cool to do that. This is if the kids are the kids in classes are listening to us now. It's very cool to experiment. You just have to find the right organization. Cool. Come hang out with us in the old people section.
Exactly.
So, Kate, where do people find you on the internet?
I am on LinkedIn, and you can find me under Kate Howard. And also we have our Eventellect page as well. So if you want to learn more about that, that's where I am.
Awesome. Well, Kate, thank you for coming back and helping me repair my mistake.
No, not at all. Not at all. We iterated. That's what we did.
That's right. I like that term.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was fun.
What did you think about my conversation with Kate Howard? Let me know. You can send me an email. It is my name, dave@davewakeman.com, and let me know. Make sure you check out my website. It's davewakeman.com. It's going through some renovations right now. I got hacked by the Russians, I think. But that's okay. It's time for a refresh anyway, so hopefully in the next couple weeks there'll be some exciting new things on the website. It's going to be awesome. Make sure you check out my friends at Booking Protect, the global leaders in refund protection. Like I said at the start, Simon tells me that refund protection uptake has almost doubled since tickets have started to go on sale during the pandemic. That tells me that people are looking for certainty and peace of mind when they make purchases. If you haven't already looked into refund protection, it could be a valuable tool in getting people to purchase now with certainty. Things are opening up tremendously, right? There's things everywhere. Full capacity in a lot of places here in the States, and fans in England, fans in Australia, fans in places all over the world. So check them out. That's bookingprotect.com. Talk to the team there. Find out how you can offer your organization. Your organization can offer refund protection to your customers. I know from experience that it improves your customer service, it improves your reputation, and it improves the perception of value that people gain from the purchase process with a business. So check them out. Also, hook up with my friends at ActivityStream. Like I said, Martin Gameltoff coming on the podcast next week. We're going to talk about the Activate email marketing campaign system. I can't speak highly enough about the people at ActivityStream. They have been great friends and partners to me over the years. The new tool is awesome. They did the We Will Recover project to help people get through the pandemic. The ActivityStream platform uses artificial intelligence and machine learning to turn your data into cool, magical moments. If you haven't listened to me and Martin talk about the magical moments over the years, you've been missing out. So go back and search those in the archives, but check them out, activitystream.com. If you liked what Kate and I were talking about research, I've teamed up with Eventellect to put together a Net Promoter Score worksheet. It's simple. It helps you understand what Net Promoter Score is, how to do the survey yourself, and it gives you some context. Eventellect had a 77 when they did their research at the start of the pandemic. That's unbelievable, right? Talking Tickets, I do one pretty regularly, about 3 times a year, and I've improved mine, and I'm at like a 67. So 77 is unbelievable. It is up there with Tesla and Starbucks and Apple, companies that you think of as having extremely high customer satisfaction. It's great. If you want to get the worksheet, send me an email, dave@davewakeman.com. I will send it to you. It walks you through the whole process. It's great. Make sure you get your tickets to Ticket Summit in August. I'll be there talking with Kate Howard again. Still pulling together a few more people. It's going to be great. I should have a few more details about things next week to share with you. So it should be a very fun thing. But check out ticketsummit.com. I will be speaking. It's going to be awesome. Make sure you get the Talking Tickets newsletter, talkingtickets.substack.com. Year 3. This is amazing. This is episode like 140 something. This is awesome, right? The pandemic is lessening its stress on me, but I thank you for being here and listening. Strangely enough, every time I put out a podcast, people still listen. So thank you for that. If you have any ideas, suggestions, things you need to learn or want to learn more about, let me know. This has been great. I'm going to put together and put it into the podcast stream, my pricing presentation from the National Sports Forum with a few updates over the next week or two. We have Martin, a whole bunch of stuff. But, I just want to take a moment to thank you once again for being a listener, for engaging with me, for working with me, for being a partner, for all those cool things. And until next time, I'll see you soon. Take care.